In the modern world, wars are no longer fought only with tanks, missiles, and soldiers on a battlefield. Increasingly, conflicts begin silently, hidden within computer networks and lines of code. Cyber warfare has become one of the most powerful strategic weapons that nations possess. Governments rely heavily on digital infrastructure to operate critical systems such as power grids, military communication networks, satellites, and intelligence databases. Because of this reliance on technology, cyber attacks can disrupt entire countries without a single physical weapon being used. Highly skilled hackers, advanced malware, and artificial intelligence tools are constantly being used by governments to spy on or sabotage rival nations. Most cyber attacks are detected and stopped before they cause significant damage. But sometimes, a threat slips through unnoticed. When that happens, a hidden breach inside a secure system can grow quietly in the background for months or even years.
Connor Bell was an intelligence analyst responsible for monitoring cyber threats that could impact national security. Late one evening, while scanning dark web forums for suspicious activity, Connor came across something unusual. Among the usual criminal advertisements and stolen data dumps was a file labeled Project Obsidian V. At first, Connor assumed the document was fake. The dark web is filled with fabricated leaks and misleading information designed to attract attention. But something about the file caught his interest. Curious, he opened the document. What he saw made him stop immediately. The file contained a classified intelligence report. Connor read through the document carefully, and within seconds, he realized something was very wrong. The report was identical to one he had personally written and submitted to the agency just the day before. The formatting matched. The language matched. Even the redacted sections appeared exactly the same. There was no doubt about it. Someone had gained access to one of the most secure intelligence networks in the United States. Connor immediately reported the discovery to his supervisor, Director Joel Miller. Within minutes, the agency began launching an internal investigation. What initially appeared to be a simple leak was quickly becoming something much more dangerous. And government authorities. The attackers had not only accessed classified files, they had gained access to critical defense infrastructure. Communication networks, satellite systems, and operational planning data were potentially exposed. The cyber operation was traced to a Russian cyber warfare unit led by Viktor Sokolov. From a secure facility overseas, his team had been conducting a long-term infiltration campaign. Their goal was to gain strategic leverage by quietly embedding themselves inside U.S. systems. Unlike traditional warfare, cyber operations allow countries to weaken their adversaries without openly declaring conflict. However, when such attacks are discovered, tensions can rise quickly. At the United Nations, Ambassador Daniel Reyes attempted to prevent the situation from escalating. Without publicly revealing classified intelligence, diplomatic negotiations became extremely complicated. Meanwhile, military forces began quietly preparing for the possibility that the cyber conflict could evolve into something much larger. The world was now standing dangerously close to a new kind of war. While the international situation continued to grow more tense, Connor kept digging deeper into the breach, convinced that something about the attack still did not add up. The intruders had moved through the system with an ease that was almost impossible to explain. There were no obvious signs of forced entry, no clear moment when the defenses had failed, no single mistake large enough to account for the scale of the compromise. That was what troubled him most. This had not been the work of opportunistic hackers taking advantage of a recent weakness. It felt older than that, more deliberate, more carefully planned. So Connor went back through the record's months of logs, then years searching line by line through forgotten data that no one had examined in a long time. Hidden among routine activity, buried beneath layers of normal system traffic, he found something strange, a timestamp that did not belong. At first, it seemed insignificant, just one anomaly in a sea of technical noise. But the more he traced it, the clearer the pattern became. The breach, had not started recently. It had begun years earlier. What Connor uncovered was far worse than a conventional intrusion. The attackers had never needed to break in from the outside. They had entered through the hardware itself. Somewhere in the global supply chain, before the equipment had even arrived, malicious code had been secretly embedded into critical infrastructure components. The compromise had been planted long before the devices were installed inside the agency's network, long before anyone suspected a threat was already waiting to be activated. Once the hardware came online, the attackers gained silent access. No alarms, no visible disruption, no immediate sign that the system had already been opened from within. From that moment on, they could watch, wait, and move carefully through the network without drawing attention. What looked like a sudden attack was, in reality, the final stage of a plan set in motion years before. The realization was chilling. This was not just a breach. It was an infiltration designed with patience, precision, and extraordinary foresight. The enemy had not slipped past the gates. They had helped build the gate itself. And for all that time, the breach had been hiding in plain sight.
Connor knew the discovery could not stay inside the cyber operations room. What he had uncovered was too serious, too dangerous to ignore. He compiled the evidence and presented his findings to the agency's leadership. On the large briefing screens, lines of code and network diagrams revealed a troubling picture. The malware was not sitting on a single computer. It was woven deep inside the infrastructure itself, hidden within critical systems that powered the entire defense network. This was not a normal cyber intrusion. It had been carefully embedded in the hardware long before the systems were installed, hiding silently inside the network for years. Because of that, traditional cybersecurity defenses would not work. Antivirus tools, patches, and system updates could slow the activity, but they could not fully remove it. The malicious code was too deeply rooted. Connor explained the implications in simple terms. As long as the network remained active, the attackers could still reach inside it. There was only one possible solution. The entire defense network would have to be temporarily shut down. The room fell silent. Shutting down such a critical system was not a small decision. Large portions of the country's cyber defenses depended on that network. Communications, monitoring systems, and defensive infrastructure all relied on it. Disabling it, even briefly, could create dangerous blind spots. Some officials worried the shutdown could leave the country exposed to other threats. What if another adversary took advantage of the gap? What if critical systems went offline at the wrong moment? But leaving the network active carried an even greater risk. If the attackers still had hidden control, they could manipulate systems, disrupt communications, or escalate the crisis further. The debate grew intense. Military advisors, cybersecurity experts, and intelligence officials weighed the options carefully. Every choice carried consequences. Finally, leadership reached a decision. They approved the shutdown. Back inside the Cyber Operations Center, the order was given. Technicians began disconnecting systems one by one. Across the room, rows of glowing monitors started to fade. Screens went dark. Network connections dropped offline. Data streams that had once filled the displays suddenly stopped. The vast digital battlefield fell quiet. Without an active network to control, the attackers' access points disappeared. The hidden pathways they had used for years collapsed instantly. Their grip on the system was gone. In the hours that followed, the international tensions that had been building began to slowly ease. Suspicious signals stopped. Escalating alerts faded away. The crisis had been stopped. Not with missiles. Not with retaliation. But with careful observation, patience, and a single discovery.
All because one analyst noticed a detail others had almost missed. In a world connected by millions of lines of code, the smallest anomaly can hide the largest threat. A single timestamp. A line of data buried in years of system logs. Most people will never see those signals. They pass quietly through networks every second of every day. But sometimes, one person is watching closely enough to notice. Because in the age of cyber warfare, the most dangerous attacks are not always loud or visible. Sometimes they begin silently, years before anyone realizes a war has already started.